Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blueprints, Canada's Conservative podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock, broadcasting live from my constituency office in the beautiful province of Ontario. The town is called Lindsay. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We have an amazing program lined up for you today, some explosive issues happening this week. And although it is summer, we are not taking the day off. We are continuing to push along. Parliament has resumed, as you probably know. Yesterday it was called back because the government wanted to pass some legislation. However, Justin Trudeau was not in the House of Commons during question period. He decided, let's take a personal day. It's July. Why not? Today, we are told he's back in Parliament, thankfully, and he will be taking some of the tough questions that we will be posing to him. As I said, amazing show, so we need you to help us push back against the ever-moving Liberal agenda. Please like, subscribe, comment, share to this program, and together we will be able to do that. Also, if you are watching us today on Facebook, but you may want to listen to us as you do other activities, you can do so by downloading the content on Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, CastBox, you name it, we are out there. In the second half of the show, we have Stephanie Kusie. It's more of an Alberta theme today. Although the issues are national, two Alberta MPs. Stephanie Kusie, she's the Member of Parliament for Calgary-Midnapore. She'll be up in the second half of the show. You may have heard that Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation has contributed quite a bit of money, $250,000, to study an issue about potentially taxing the profits you make from your home. Of course, the government's always there with a handout. It's apparently greedy if you want to keep more of your money, but not greedy if they want to keep taxing you. So she's coming up in the second half. You will want to stick around for that. First up, though, we have a newcomer to the show. We have Damien Kurek. He was newly elected in 2019, amazing individual from Battle River-Crowfoot. He's also a member of the Ethics Committee. He's going to talk to us here about the WE scandal, which is just unbelievable. If you have been paying attention to this, new developments all the time. Now we have the WE organization into real estate. We have them talking to government ministers and people within the bureaucracy about how to structure a program that can get money out to students. It is absolutely unreal. And that goes also to the fact that the WE organization potentially was going to not only get $912 million for their efforts doing this, but they are also planning to profit about $20 million. Some say it's more for their part in finding these so-called volunteers, although you're getting paid to volunteer. I don't know how that works. So Damien, thank you for joining us. You're on the Ethics Committee. We appreciate your time. There was a bit of action at the Ethics Committee. I guess there was a filibuster. The Liberals were filibustering the Ethics Committee, which was trying to look into this. Why don't you unpack that for us? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jamie. It's great to be on the show with you here today. And as my role in the Ethics Committee, it was quite something. Conservative MPs called for the committee to resume in order to make sure that we can get the answers that Canadians deserve on this issue. You have close to $1 billion, and that billion with a B, of taxpayers' dollars that going towards this program. And then you find out that between personal family connections, friends of the Prime Minister, the scandal just keeps running deeper and deeper. So it was important that the Ethics Committee could study this. And I know you talked about on your show last week with our Shadow Minister for Ethics, Michael Barrett, and that was just before the committee was going to meet. And then we got there with a certain level of optimism that we could start to get these answers for Canadians. And then the unthinkable happened. We moved the motion, we started debate, and there the Liberals started filibustering. And for those of you who are not aware of that term, it's basically delaying the proceedings, filling up time. Liberal after Liberal member of that committee just started talking about almost anything that they could imagine, from quoting philosophers in Latin to in fact, it sounded more like a university lecture than it did a committee proceeding. And it was to run out the clock. And then clumsily at 2:00, when the committee was scheduled initially to end, they tried to have it shut down. Now, they didn't obviously understand the rules. They couldn't do that. And eventually, when the committee meeting was adjourned, it was with the understanding that we'll be back shortly to continue debate on this issue, because Canadians deserve answers. You know, it was quite something. I wrote down half a dozen quotes that these Liberal members talked about. One was, you should not do indirectly what you wouldn't do directly, when they were transparently trying to shut down debate on this issue of where, you know, $912 million of what could be $42 million paid to the Liberals' friends. And there's a whole bunch of, you know, every day we see news articles and more information coming out about the deep connections between this charity and the highest levels of the Liberal government. In fact, yesterday in question period, he mentioned the Prime Minister couldn't find the time, even though he picked the day to recall Parliament, he couldn't find the time to show up to work. Yet you had MPs from across the country fly to Ottawa and got here. But the Prime Minister decided he wasn't going to show up. And when I asked a question to the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Youth, I asked about if she knew about this connection between the highest levels of the Liberal government and the We Charity, and she kind of had a non-answer and spun the issue away. But less than an hour later, we saw a news article that revealed that she actually met with that charity only days before the announcement was made. So the scandal runs deep, and Canadians deserve answer. And all Conservative members of the Ethics Committee and all Conservatives across the country are working hard to make sure we get the answers that all Canadians deserve.
And as the media starts to look into this charity a little more, I look on Canadaland, and they have a great interview with some auditors from the Charity Intelligence Canada organization, which looks at the books to a wide range of charities, a very nonpartisan organization. And they were even saying that some of the work that they were doing in terms of leveraging real estate wasn't actually to the intent of what the organization was supposed to be doing, and really changed the whole scope of what the organization was about, which is basically investing in real estate and using that equity to build wealth for themselves, which I think had a few people, especially opposition members, saying, wait a second, this is going deeper than we probably thought.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's just each and every day we learn more that the corruption runs deep. In fact, it was this morning that we heard or I saw an article that said between 2015 and 2019, there was $5.2 million that it was paid by the federal government to the We organization, and you're right with the work that Charity Intelligence has done, which is that watchdog for charities to make sure that money that people donate to charities is going where it's intended to go. And all of a sudden, there seems to be some real questions that need to be answered on why money is being spent in a certain way, why a charity would be paying a privately owned company to do work and without showing anything, and it's going against the very mission and the letters patent of what that organization was meant to be. And it just adds levels of complexity to the scandal that show that there's a lot more to the story here. And certainly that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of on the ethics committee, to say, look, we need all this information out to light. The scandal keeps running deeper. There's connection to the PM, to those in the Prime Minister's office. More and more members of cabinet, it seems like every day, are ready to are acknowledging that they are either connected or somehow connected. So you start to look at the connections, and it becomes a pretty complicated web. And the thing that connects it all is there seems to be scandal and money changing hands, and it's taxpayers' money that seems to be changing hands. And you know, it's troubling as we learn more and more, and the connections are made, and ultimately, you know, if we don't get answers, these are dollars that are need to be treated with respect, which of course is often a challenge when it comes to the Liberal attitude. In fact, it was a couple of weeks ago that the Prime Minister talked about the government spending money so Canadians didn't have to. Well, as Conservatives, we know that's simply not true. It's Canadians' money when the government spends it. But you know, again, there's this complicated web that leads directly back to the Prime Minister's office, and answers need to be found because Canadians deserve to know exactly what happened.
Now, Damien, I know you this, but I know you know this, but for our viewers and listeners, on July 15th, the Toronto Sun published a story on the $43.7 million in real estate held by We Charity. So that property is in one section of Toronto with affiliated groups such as Me to We. So it basically helped the combined organizations control a full block east of Toronto's downtown core. And real estate, if you aren't familiar with Toronto real estate, it is quite expensive. And this is a major area in which people try to invest or hold real estate. Now, you had mentioned this earlier, Damien, as well. The Trudeau family connections with We is deep running. Justin Trudeau spoke at his first We Day in 2007, before he was elected as a member of Parliament. He also spoke in 2008, 2012, 2015, 2017. His mother appeared at 28 We events and traveled the world with the organization. And according to this report here, Margaret Trudeau was paid a total of $312,000 for her speaking events from 2016 to 2020. His brother Alexander spoke at 8 We Day events, made almost $40,000 in events, and his wife, Justin Trudeau's wife, Sophie, was at a We Day event in Montreal in 2012. Her husband, Justin, was the guest speaker. We says they paid Sophie $1,400 for that speaking fee. And we all know also that Sophie Trudeau was an ambassador for We, and she also spoke prior to the COVID-19 outbreak at a Me to We event in London, England.
Yeah.
That's quite the remarkable laundry list.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Like this reads more like a true crime novel when you see the levels of corruption here. You have the family directly benefiting, and certainly, Jamie, you would know that as members of Parliament, we take very, very seriously the idea of a conflict of interest. That we're not in politics to benefit ourselves. We're here to work for Canadians, and to have that laundry list of family members that made big money to an organization that has pretty suspicious dealings in the Toronto real estate market, and goes. We're being told directly against their mandate as a charity, and a charity paying a for-profit organization to invest in real estate. Like that's the sort of stuff that you hear about taking place in the developing world and in dictatorships, not a free and open, and what should be a free, open, transparent democracy. And the fact that the Prime Minister's own mother benefited to that extent is an extraordinary revelation. And I've had a number of constituents come and say, how does one get one of those contracts, right? Yet then we're hearing from sports athletes and other well-known personalities, conservative politicians that have been asked to speak at a few of these events. The organization said, we don't pay our speakers. Well, it sounds like they simply don't pay their speakers unless they're closely connected with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. And it's this whole idea of Liberal Inc. It's this corrupt organization that seems to be just rotten from the top, and has its fingers in things like shady real estate dealings and family members benefiting and trying to manipulate the justice system. This is not the first time this has obviously happened. You had the first Trudeau ethics report, that infamous vacation to the Aga Khan Island, when supposedly it was this close friend, when the ethics commissioner made it very clear that there was no such close friendship. Then you had the Trudeau 2 report, where you see Canada's first Indigenous Attorney General fired when she wouldn't basically do exactly as the Prime Minister wished, and a whole host of revelations associated with that. And now we're into the third ethics violation. And I don't know. It's and generally where I'm from, people say 3 strikes you're out, and I think that it's time and for this Prime Minister to acknowledge that it's not just ethical failings when it keeps happening time and time again. Like, there is truly something wrong here. And I know Andrew Scheer in the House yesterday asked the question if it was corruption or incompetence. And it's a legitimate question that a lot of Canadians need to ask, because there is this time and time again, we are seeing these ethical failings of epic proportions. And when Justin Trudeau tweeted out in 2014 about scandal, well, it seems that he hasn't taken his own advice, and Canadians are ultimately paying the bill, and even to see that there's global accountability watchdogs that now have increased the corruption index for Canada. Canadians deserve to know how their government is spending their money, and yet you have these non-political global organizations that are saying you can't trust what the government of Canada is doing anymore. These are troubling things, and certainly, as all conservatives from coast to coast are working hard to make sure that we get those answers, because every day we see these violations. Every day you see the flippant nature in which Liberals conduct themselves. They think they deserve to be in charge. Well, it's up to Canadians to pick who's in charge, and certainly I'm hearing, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Jamie, and I'm sure lots of other guests and listeners are hearing the exact opposite, that it's up to Canadians to decide who governs their country, not the divine right of a prime minister that doesn't understand that he needs to be held accountable for his actions.
Damien, your riding is in Alberta. However, we noticed that you are in Ottawa for the sitting of the House this week. We wish you luck. What's on schedule for today? Are you going to be able to get a question in about these ethics violations and keep the Prime Minister's feet to the fire, I hope?
Yeah, so I had a question yesterday. I was up here a couple hours ago doing a speech and answered some questions on that, and then I'm up again tomorrow, and the ethics committee sits again tomorrow afternoon at 2:00. So for all of you politicos watching, make sure tune in to CPAC tomorrow afternoon at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. I have no doubt that there will be lots of fireworks as Michael Barrett, Jacques Gord, and myself are going to keep holding the feet of these Liberals to the fire to demand the answers that the Canadians deserve.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Damien, for your time. We really appreciate it. And good luck today in Ottawa. I appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Excellent. Jamie, and all the best.
You as well. Damien Kurek, the Member of Parliament for Battle River-Crowfoot in the beautiful province of Alberta. We appreciate his time. Coming up next, as I promised, Stephanie Kusie, the Member of Parliament for Calgary-Midnapore. We're going to talk about the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation investing quite a bit of money to investigate the possibility of taxing the revenue you get from the sale of your home. Amazing, the government, again, with their handouts. So stick around for that. Remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint. Hang tight. Part 2 coming up. Welcome back to part 2 of the Blueprint, Canada's Conservative podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, broadcasting live from my constituency office in Lindsay, Ontario. Thank you very much for joining us. We had a great first half with Damien Kurek, the Member of Parliament for Battle River-Crowfoot, to talk about the ever-growing WE scandal that the Liberal government has seemed to found themselves in, the third potential ethics violation of Justin Trudeau's reign, and we hope to keep pushing that in committee in the House of Commons Commons today. So if you are done watching the Blueprint after the show, feel free to tune into CPAC and see what the fellow Conservatives are doing in the House to keep Justin Trudeau's feet to the fire. Remember, we need your help to push back against the ever-moving Liberal agenda. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this program, and together we will be able to do it. I know it's July. The Prime Minister took yesterday off, even though he had the House of Commons recalled yesterday and today. He'll be in the House today. Apparently, July, the weather was nice. He didn't need to show up for work. He had the Deputy Prime Minister take some of the questions, but he will be in there today. However, a developing story we have on hand is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation apparently spent $250,000, $250,000, to conduct a study to look at home equity tax on residential homes. My goodness. Joining me now is Stephanie Kusie, Member of Parliament for Calgary-Midnapore, the Alberta Touch today. She's also the Shadow Minister for Families, Children, and Social Development, a real friend of the show. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephanie.
Jamie, it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me today.
You are wonderful to accept the invitation because this is a ridiculous topic. I cannot believe we're even talking about it, but yet this is not the first time this has come up. Before the previous election, this was actually submitted in a series of recommendations to the Liberal National Council as something to consider, taxing the equity on your primary residence. Maybe you can touch this for us, please.
Sure, Jamie. Well, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Let's just start by saying that this government is absolutely desperate for any type of revenue they can get their little hands on. They left us in a terrible position coming into this pandemic. We've seen that debt is now over $1 trillion, deficit $343 billion. I always have to check myself if I'm saying a B or an M, but it's B for billion. So clearly they're looking for revenue any way that they can find it. And as you mentioned, this is not the first time that we have heard of this. They actually passed a policy resolution at the Liberal Convention for a 50% capital gains tax on the sale of homes. So this has been on their mind for some time now. As you said, it's a $250,000 investment to look into what an equity tax would look like. You know what, Jamie, that is so vague. I think that's a part of it that absolutely scares me, is the vagueness of it. What does that mean exactly, an equity tax? Now, I'm sure you're also aware that Minister Sen tried to go to social media this weekend. He tried to sort of quell this, calm us down, say, oh, this isn't going to happen. But you know what his tweet said, Jamie? He said, oh, no, we're not going to be taxing on secondary residences. So someone like Bill Morneau doesn't have to worry about his chateaus in France or whatever. No, well, you and me, like good Canadians. Now, I recognize you are in the heart of cottage country, but I have one residence and it's my primary residence. So I'm not really worried about my secondary or tertiary, if you will, residences. I mean, this is something that will get homeowners up in arms. Absolutely. And the scariest thing about this, as I said previously, because of their need for revenue, because they have managed the finances of Canada so terribly, I don't care what they say. If they say, oh, we're not serious about this isn't going to happen. Absolutely not true at all. Jamie, to me, this stinks of 2017, when they tried to just sneak in those small business taxes across the country, right? And we, as the official opposition, we were up in arms. I come from a small business family, so this hurts me personally. People who had prepared their entire retirement based upon the existing rules, people who had planned their entire inheritance transition based upon existing tax rules. The Liberals tried to sneak in and change all of those small business laws. And then when they were caught red-handed, they were like, oh, kidding. We didn't really mean it. Joke, we got you there. No, as we have seen this week, as my wonderful colleague, Damien Kurek, who was on just before me, we can see that they will get away with anything that they possibly can. They will attempt to get away with anything that they possibly can. This is nothing different. Thank goodness we are talking about this today, Jamie, because it is a real possibility. This is another little sneaky trial balloon that they're trying to put in there to get their hands on more revenue while they hand out money to Loblaws and MasterCard, and now we, of course. And so Canadians should be concerned about the potential of this new tax. This is not a joke. This is not, oh, it might happen. We're just checking into this. They are trying to get their greedy little hands on money any way that they can. Your money, my money, everyone who's watching here's money, so that they can hand it out to their friends and their colleagues and their close contacts, as we've seen this week, Jamie. So I, as the Shadow Minister for Families, Children, and Social Development, I will fight this tooth and nail. Right beside me is of course our Finance Shadow Minister, Pierre Poilievre, who did a great job of battling those small business taxes. Right beside me is our other colleagues, including James, coming not as related here, but certainly is another fighter within our finance group as well, and our entire Conservative caucus, I will add, because we have always stood up for the taxpayer. We have always questioned anytime those Liberals want to get their hands on more of our money, and this is certainly the case here, Jamie.
Well, Stephanie, you're definitely fired up, and I love your passion about this, because this is something, like I said at the beginning, I can't believe we're talking about it. So let's just break this down in a couple of ways. Any Canadian, for the most part, in the vast majority of cases, when they invest, whether it be in stocks, in real estate for their primary residence, or even a secondary if you want to have a cottage or you want to have a rental property, those are done in the vast majority of cases with after-tax dollars. So you've already paid the tax. Again, the government has been spending like crazy, and they're looking for ways to not only pay their bills, but fund future endeavors. But not only that, I'm going to go one step deeper, and you may or may not agree. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. But the other part to this, and I think this goes with the left's agenda, is that if the government, through taxes, rules, regulations, makes owning a house so unaffordable, people will then need to rely on government for housing, which then creates the dependency on government. It takes people out of the housing market, which would be able to accumulate wealth and then provide for yourself, your family, and future generations. But then it puts you at the mercy of government, and what government gives you, whether you like it, whether you want it, whether you need it, government will provide. And that, I think, is what the left wants.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think a perfect example of that is the First Time Home Buyers Initiative, right? Oh, come and buy a house. Well, guess who your mortgage lending partner is? The government of Canada, right? So again, there they are trying to get their hands on your money. I know that program was a complete failure. We saw very limited uptake in that across Canada. It was supposed to be a tool to allow families to have access to housing. But you're right, we have to question their intentions in regards to the access to capital that they would have had of Canadian families. And this, it constantly makes me sick in the house, Jamie, because, they stand up, my counter minister stands up, and no, not even just him, so many Liberals stand up in the house and they say, prior to the pandemic, oh, we've lifted 1 million people out of poverty. That is a lie, Jamie. They're keeping people in poverty through their terrible fiscal management. In my opinion, especially now we're seeing this, through their terrible management of the economic recovery. In fact, we don't have an economic recovery plan. As you know, we are the only G7 nation that doesn't have an economic recovery plan right now. But I know exactly what you're saying. I feel they keep Canadians on a dreadful treadmill of reliance. They take with one hand, they give a little bit with one hand, but they take so much more with the other hand. And this could be another example of that, no doubt. And I will also mention to you, although Justin Trudeau did have a personal day yesterday, he did take the day off canoeing or paddle boating, or whatever he does. I have no idea, and I don't want to spend too much time thinking about it. But I did notice on social media that he was not too busy to tweet that it was the day of increases for the Canada Child Benefit. And I thought, hey, buddy, why the tweet? This is your big day off. But my point is that, it's another diversion to Canadians. Like, oh, don't look at the WE scandal. Look at what we're doing with the Canada Child Benefit. But even the benefit itself, as I said, it is giving a little bit with one hand, but taking so much from that other hand. I really believe keeping Canadians on this dreadful financial slash economic treadmill. So I think you are absolutely right to have that suspicion that this Liberal Party, this Liberal government, Justin Trudeau, and the left in general, they want to keep people poor. They want to control people. They want to have control. And again, this is coming out all this week in this WE scandal, which is just another example of it, along with this $250,000 study, if you will, as to this additional tax. But this is no new trick for the left, for Liberals, and just shame on them for trying to do this to Canadians, Jamie.
So the grant that CMHC was working with was with the University of British Columbia. So the researchers, and this is through the Liberal government's national housing strategy, talked about homeowners as lottery winners. They also went on, and this is from Blacklock's reporter, and this is quoting from the invitation where they're looking for feedback and information. It's asking people to collaborate in the Solutions Lab. It's a partnership with CMHC. And it goes on to read, the more we make home ownership profitable, the more we make housing unaffordable. And there's more. The lab is bound to raise questions about tax policy, including how labor and capital gains from the stock market are taxed more than the wealth accumulated from your primary residence. So it goes on to say, many Canadians bank on profits from home ownership to secure their financial future. I would say that's true, but we need to make it so no Canadian relies on gains in housing wealth. Are you kidding me?
That's absolutely ridiculous. Part of the Canadian dream historically has been home ownership, and I recognize there's changing information with new demographics. You know, we often hear about how millennials are more interested in renting things, for example. But part of the Canadian dream historically is home ownership. And you know, you mentioned the national housing strategy, Jamie, and this is another thing that the Liberals parade in front of the House and the Canadian public all the time, is this national housing strategy. But what they are doing a terrible job of, and everything you just said points to that, is moving Canadians along the housing continuum, you know, moving them towards home ownership, and them not putting into place the genuine credible programs to do that. We talked about the First Time Home Buyers Initiative, right? The stress test that created all sorts of horrible circumstances for Canadians who wanted to purchase a residence. They're doing a bad job of moving Canadians along the housing continuum. And it feeds right back into what we talked about with keeping Canadians poor. The left wants to keep people in poor economic conditions so that they can look like the good guys when they hand out stuff. And I see it here all the time. I saw it here throughout the entire fall. You know, the parliamentary secretary, Adam Vaughan, traipsing across Canada, handing out, you know, funding left, right, and center for the National Housing Initiative. You know, Canadians want their own place. They want a sense of independence and freedom. They want to feel good about taking care of their own lives and livelihood and their families. And again, this is not the objective of the Liberal government or of the left. The objective of the Liberal government and the left is to keep them down so that they can keep handing out these things, handing out the Canada Child Benefit, handing out the funding through the National Housing Strategy. But guess what? Money doesn't grow on trees, Jamie. Unless you have a beautiful, you're riding so beautiful, you must have a tree in your riding there that has money. We have 5 beautiful lakes here in Calgary-Midnapore, and I tell you, I've seen lots of tadpoles and a few trout and lots of small rodents like squirrels and chipmunks, but I've never seen a money tree, Jamie. So if you see one, let me know. That revenue has to be created from somewhere. So rather than supporting the engine of the economy, small business, medium-sized business, as we saw them try to destroy in 2017, they are grabbing with their little hands at new taxes. And again, this $250,000 study for this equity tax, this is not a joke. this has real potential to become a real tax, and it's because they need any type of revenue that they can get their hands on from individuals who have worked hard, who have contributed to the economy, who have created wealth, and they want to put those people down and get their hands on their money.
Well, the left calls it greed.
Oh,
why is it greedy to
ridiculous.
want to keep your money, but it's not greed to tax them? But you touched on it too, and we're way over time, unfortunately. But this is such a hot topic. That's okay. That's okay. We're way over time, but I would just want to point out something, and you touched on it, but I would just want to expand on it a bit. Home ownership gives any individual the ability for upward mobility in their lives. It allows them to create equity. You can sell it. You can modify it. You have the freedom to do what you choose. It's the same thing as, let's say, a car, right? If you're going to spend $400 on a bus pass or $400 on a car, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. At the end of that term, at the end of 5-year term, you have something to show for your money. Well, it might not be worth much, but you could sell it for parts. You can use it as field car. You have all these options. If you only are spending that money on a bus, which the left wants you to do, and there's nothing wrong with public transit, but I'm saying if you have the choice, if you have the freedom to make the choice, in this case, they want to make things so expensive. Whether you want to build a house, get into home ownership, it makes it very tough for people to get into and start that process of upward mobility.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And you said we're over time, and I think you are coming full circle to this show of Albertans that you have had here today, because nowhere have we seen that more than Alberta, where they have destroyed our natural resources sector. To go back to past shows through C69, C48, the carbon tax. I could go on and on, but it is in an attempt to keep us down, because Albertans are entrepreneurial, tenacious, innovative, and it just feels like they are trying to just quash us down, with their little hands. Excuse me. And this, I think this is a great place to end, because this study that we've seen, the $250,000, it's just another attempt to come after our money because of their poor financial planning and lack of an economic recovery plan, Jamie. And it's unfortunate, but I'm glad we're talking about it today. Thank you for bringing it to the attention of conservatives and of Canadians. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie Kusie. We appreciate your time. You're a good friend of the show. We will have you on again, as always, because we do appreciate your contribution and your energy fighting for Canadians and those that want to keep more of the money they earn and spend on the priorities that are important to them. She's the Member of Parliament for Calgary-Midnapore. She's also the Conservative Shadow Minister for Families, Children, and Social Development. We appreciate her time coming from Calgary, Alberta. Thank you very much for joining the show. This was an important topic, two great topics, very, very timely on what's going on in the news. I know it's summertime. I know there is the appetite to get out and enjoy the warm weather, which I hope you do, but also realize the Trudeau Liberals are working behind the scenes. Although it is July, although it is time to relax, they are trying to find ways to take more of your money and make life even more uncomfortable. But we are fighting back for you, but we need your help. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this program. Help us push back against the ever-moving Liberal agenda. If you're not able to watch it on Facebook here today, you can download this and listen to it while you're doing other activities on platforms like Castbox, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, it's out there. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your help. We will be back next Tuesday. We're not taking a day off. We don't slow down here. We aren't liberals. We will be back Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. with another edition of The Blueprint. Remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's The Blueprint. Thanks for joining us.